Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Cass, for the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to be here to share about the National Natural Landmarks Program. I also want to thank everyone who is out there today listening. Thank you for your patience as we got this going and dealt with those technological difficulties. And yeah, thanks for your time to be here and for your interest in this. So today I'm just going to provide a really brief overview of the program, talk a little bit about the history, some of the details regarding designation, its relation to the National Park Service, and then provide a little insight on where we are headed with the program. And so with that, I'll just go ahead and get started. The National Natural Landmarks Program was established in 1962, and it was established by Secretary of the Interior Udall. The primary purpose at the time of establishment for the program was to identify, recognize, and encourage the conservation of sites that illustrate the geological and ecological story of America. And this program is administered by the National Park Service. So what is an NNL? Well, these are natural areas that have been given the federal designation as a national natural landmark in recognition that the site contains outstanding examples of biological and or geological features. So these sites collectively tell the story of our nation's natural history. A unique aspect of NNL designation is that it occurs on lands of any ownership, both public and private. And so this includes areas that are owned and managed by other federal agencies, states, counties, municipalities, tribal entities, and private organizations and individuals. About 50% of the current designated sites are publicly owned. They're owned by public agencies. 32% of them are entirely privately owned, and then the remaining 18% are a mix of both public and private ownership. And these sites are designated by the Secretary of the Interior, and that is done after thorough scientific study. There are currently 598 sites that are recognized as NNLs across the United States and the American territories. And sites are designated for fairly specific biological and or geological features. So sites of biological significance include both terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems, and they would include resources such as riparian desert ecosystems. Significance includes features representing geological processes, the products or landforms resulting from those processes, and features that are representative of geologic history. So some examples of geologic sites might include fossil sites, solution caves, and volcanic features. And as I mentioned earlier, landmarks of any ownership. And in fact, sites occur outside of units owned by the National Park Service. Of the 598 designated landmark sites, only 26 of them occur within 20 different units of the National Park Service. So nearly all of these areas are owned and managed by other entities. What does landmark designation at a site do? Well, first it highlights that this area has been determined to be nationally significant for specific geological features. And so really in its purest and awareness of these important areas, this information can then help inform and encourage wise decision-making in land use planning. And this is typically done through project review as required by the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. So during project planning and review, planners should specifically consider any potential impact to NNL sites and their resources. And as part of the planning process, should then look at alternatives to possibly avoid and or minimize impacts to these sites. And finally, landmark designation creates, it establishes a partnership between the landowners and the National Park Service, and then this then creates opportunities for cooperative conservation. There are some important features or aspects regarding what landmark designation does not do. Designation is not a land withdrawal, and it does not change ownership of the site. Designation also does not require public access. So there are many privately owned NNL sites that for a variety of reasons are not open to the public, and this is something that the NNL program honors. And again, it is not a requirement for designation. And then finally, landmark designation does not dictate land use. So the National Park Service does not mandate management of these sites or the resources, nor do we impose any new land use activities or restrictions. So that the NPS, we have really no authority, no regulatory authority over these sites. So given all of this, the actual conservation of these areas really only happens because of the voluntary commitment and the efforts of the various landmark owners and managers at these sites. There's a fairly in-depth process for getting a site designated as an NNL, and I'll provide just a brief overview here. The first step is to identify potential NNL sites. Potential sites are those that have been acknowledged to contain representative natural features, and therefore they may warrant further evaluation to determine the significance of those features. Potential sites are identified in a couple of ways. One is through inventory studies that were conducted in the 1970s and 80s. And then second is just through suggestion. Anybody can suggest, any individual or organization can suggest the site. So these two sources have resulted in the identification of hundreds of potential sites from which the program can select a site for evaluation. When we pick a potential site, we do a fair amount of initial vetting just to ensure that the site appears to be a strong candidate and that it will make it through the process successfully. So at this point, once we've selected a potential site to evaluate, prior to starting the evaluation, the NNL program must first receive written landowner permission. So potential sites are only evaluated for possible designation after receiving landowner concurrence and permission to evaluate the site. We then contract out with a non-NPS scientist who is an expert on the resources under evaluation, and the evaluator then prepares an evaluation report. There are two main components of an evaluation report, including an in-depth description of the resource and then a comparative analysis of the site under evaluation against other sites with similar resources. The comparative analysis uses 5 different significance criteria that have been established for the program, and this is a way to qualitatively rank the sites. You'll see listed here the criteria include the present condition, illustrative character, the rarity and diversity of the resources at the site, as well as the site's value to science and education. So based on the outcome of the comparative assessment using these criteria, the evaluator will then make a final recommendation for or against designation of the site as an NNL. Final evaluation reports go out for peer review. They also go through internal reviews within the NPS, up through the NPS director and the National Park System Advisory Board, and it also includes a public comment period. Finally, for those evaluations reports that have a positive recommendation for designation as well as maintaining landowner concurrence, those will then go to the secretary who provides a final determination and who ultimately designates sites as NNL. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit now and talk about the NNL program in the context of the National Park Service. And I'll do that, I'll start by looking at the NPS mission. So most folks are familiar with the first part of the mission, which is focused on the care and stewardship of resources within NPS boundaries. So those sites, those resources that occur on NPS lands. But the second half of the mission tends to be less well known. And so the mission continues on to say that the Park Service cooperates with partners to extend the benefits of natural and cultural resource conservation and outdoor recreation throughout this country and the world. So the NNL program ties quite directly to that second part of the mission. And so thus the National Park Service is really more than a collection of park units, but rather it really is a collective of our heritage. The National Park Service administers over 50 national and regional partnership and community assistance programs. Some of these include, and I imagine you've heard of them, some of them include the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program, the National Heritage Areas Program, Federal Lands and Parks Program, and that's just to name a few. And of course, then the National Natural Landmarks Program also falls within this. And all of these programs offer the capacity to operate outside the boundaries of NPS units, and they really serve as ongoing opportunities for engagement with partners in the NPS mission. The NNL program specifically then offers a mechanism for providing support and recognition to non-NPS site managers and landowners for their efforts in conserving significant natural features and sites. So recognizing, encouraging, and supporting conservation of landmark sites have really been the hallmark of program efforts. Through information sharing directly to the public and with other agencies, and through various planning processes, we've been able to help raise awareness of the program, as well as the value and the diversity of the resources that are recognized by these designated sites. This really helps to give an extra voice to these important areas and has resulted in targeted consideration of these areas in project planning, and especially with impact assessment. For those landmark managers and owners that have shown interest and have requested assistance, we've had the opportunity to really be able to provide or broker such assistance to try and help meet their needs. Some of the ways that we support their conservation efforts include providing technical assistance and management recommendations. A few recent examples of such assistance include a vegetation impact assessment and visitor use management recommendations for Hanging Lake here in Colorado. We also had a large multidisciplinary project to assist with the city of Denver, which owns Summit Lake Park right at the base of Mount Evans, also here in Colorado. And part of those assistance efforts included wetland and vegetation mapping and characterization, some impact assessment, as well as recommendations for restoration opportunities there at the site. And we've also been able to, we've done a whole variety of things. We've also been able to tap into NPS expertise for identification of a rare fossil that was found in a cave in Virginia. So there's a whole variety of ways that we can help provide and or broker assistance to these sites in their efforts towards conservation. We've also engaged with landmark sites in helping to seek and secure funding for projects through various small grant programs, and we've also assisted with the creation of interpretive signs and other educational materials. So all of these opportunities are ways in which we can utilize the NNL program as a tool for resource conservation outside of NPS boundaries. Recently, we have been challenged to look for new and different ways to utilize the program that support landscape scale conservation efforts. So essentially, how can we take advantage of this already established network of sites and partners to advance broader goals and engage in broader conservation efforts? And so to do this, we've been going through a strategic review process this past year. We have revisited the program vision and mission, and we've been revising and expanding the goals and objectives to meet these new challenges. And so really we've been working to chart a course for the program for the years to come. And I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of the full process or all of the outcomes here. I'd be happy to share more with anybody that is interested afterwards. But I did want to share the 6 goals that we identified for the program. And the 3 that are listed on the slide that are a bit grayed out get at the essence of the program, and that is of site recognition and conservation support. And those will continue to be a mainstay of program effort. Draw attention, though, I wanted to draw attention to the 3 goals that are, and so these are the goals that are going to help guide our efforts and energies at increased collaboration and engagement in shared initiatives. to find ways to continue to improve awareness and understanding of sites to all audiences, to landowners, the public, in addition to within the NPS. We'll look at various digital outlets, print media, and looking for new and different outreach opportunities. We'll also be seeking to create leadership both within and outside of the NPS, and working to identify and connect with NPS as well as DOI-wide conservation initiatives and programs, as well as looking to connect with regional and national projects and initiatives and various communities of conservation practice there. So we're just now finalizing strategies and specific action items for FY17 to help us move toward these goals. And I have to say that implementing actions to help reach these broad goals is no small task. Thus, being able to connect and share with this group is really both exciting and very timely. So we'd ask that you please bear in mind the NNL program and these concepts as you move through your work. And when you're connecting with your networks and your partners, we always welcome any thoughts and ideas as we move down sort of this new path. We certainly look forward to seeing how this program, working in concert with other programs and initiatives, can really help to advance conservation goals at broader scales. And so with that, our website is listed here at the bottom. That is all I have for formal presentation. I'd be happy to
Great, thank you so much, Heather. The lines are open for any questions, or if you feel more comfortable, you can use the chat box and we will open up and I'll announce any questions that get plugged into there. One question in the chat box, Heather, someone's asking how the program is organized. Is it by regions, or how does it get down to the park level, I guess, as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. So structurally, the NNL program sits WASO and RSS Directorate, so the Natural Resource Stewardship and Science Directorate at the WASO level. And that's where my position is. Then we also have regional coordinators for every region, with the exception of, we don't technically have an NCR coordinator, but the sites in that general area are covered by our Southeast coordinator and our Northeast regional coordinator. So every region has a NNL contact staff person, and that information for those individuals is all found on our website. And I apologize now with the new look, it could be a little bit more difficult to find, but eventually, there is something somewhere that talks about contact us. So there is contact information, or please feel free to contact me to pass along specific coordinator information. So every regional coordinator then covers the sites within their region. Some of our regional coordinators, some of our regions don't, or I should say the areas that we cover aren't necessarily in line with NPS regions. We've had to make some adjustments just given the number of NNLs, but there's absolutely somebody that can be reached to both connect with regional staff and connect with parks and answer any questions that anyone may have.
And then a follow-up question to that, how did the new challenge of conservation at broader scales come to the NNL program?
So it's basically been coming, really it's come from, Ray Salvageau's leadership as Ray has come in and recognizes the value that the program can bring at that level. And so that's kind of, where the discussions have started and where we, sort of have been tasked with this challenge. And it fits nicely with where the program is at. We, really the last 10 to 15 years have been working to sort of reestablish the program, create a program identity, really reconnect back with each of those designated sites, and have been doing that, like I said, for the last 10 to 15 years. And now it's a really nice natural progression to then start to look at this from the broader perspective. So now that some of those internal connections are strengthened, those relationships with landmark sites have been better reestablished, it fits very nicely with the, the vision that Ray has brought forward to start looking that way. And there seems to be and of course I know, Ray is the chair with the Scaling Up initiative. There seems to be in general a leaning for the Park Service to look at the broader aspects of the National Park Service. That again, it's not, while the park units are certainly a very important piece of this, the Park Service is really involved in so much more, and to really help the public understand that and to embrace that, and really to utilize that to its full extent.
Great. Other questions from participants? Or again, feel free to just plug them into the chat box there. How many NNLs are available at this time, or are dedicated at this time?
There are 598 designated sites. And on our website, we have a national map, and from there you can click on each state, and you can see landmarks identified and graphically illustrated as far as their general location within each state. And then you can click on each site to learn a little bit more information about the significance of that site. So it gives you a chance to explore where the areas are located in general.
And I'm sure you've probably done some crossover with the National Historic Landmarks Program, which I think has somewhere around 2,500 places that have that national designation or distinction. Is that a part of the goal, to grow it so that it has that same kind of feel as NHL?
We are always in the process of adding new sites. Will we ever get to the numbers that NHLs have? It would take many careers to get there probably, and that's not necessarily the endpoint or the goal. When we look to evaluate new sites for possible addition to the landmark system, we really are looking at it from the perspective of representation of natural features. So we're going to actually start a couple of projects trying to get a bit of a handle on it, almost a gap analysis. So the overall, again, these sites collectively tell the story of the diversity of the natural features across the country. And so, really the goal would be to look at a more complete representation of all those different features. So as we select a new site for evaluation, we're going to look to see, is that natural feature already represented by a site? And ideally try to select those sites that would, fill that gap, if you will. And so that's really the target as we look to add new sites.
Great. And another question in the chat box, Heather, how often do you run into not in my backyard type attitude in your work?
Not a lot. I think there might have been, some of that earlier on in the program when they were really starting to get numbers and designate, new sites and establish this program, it's one of the things where if we have a site where, we feel that there's value in having it evaluated, like I mentioned, we don't and we can't move forward on actually evaluating a site until we have landowner permission. So we will, the first step is to contact them and say, hey, we have interest because of, these reasons. Would you be interested in participating in this and potentially having your site designated and being a part of this program? And, oftentimes we have some sense that, the landowners we're contacting, they're either already public agencies or they're sort of in the business of conservation, or they may have even contacted us at some point. So it's oftentimes out of the blue to somebody, and if somebody if we contact somebody and they just aren't interested, and this happens even with federal agencies, they'll just say it's they're going through management revisions, or they're whatever, it doesn't fit. So if there's folks, whether it's public or private, that don't have interest in participating, then we don't go there. But for the most part, with the established sites, things are, we don't run into that so much.
And one more question in the chat box, and feel free to speak up too, folks, if you're interested in just vocalizing your question. Are there any challenges or issues in regards to the public visiting national natural landmarks, or how does that work?
Where we have to walk a bit of a, do a bit of balancing and what kind of a fine line is, again, sites are not required to have public access to receive the designation, and so we have to respect that. I mean, so part of the reason for designation, again, is acknowledging that significant resources exist there, and so we want to utilize that information, certainly in planning. If Federal Highways comes in, and has plans to put in a new highway, we would like them to consider potential impacts to a site, even if it's not open to the public. So we have to make sure information is well enough known so that, permitting agencies and agencies that are making decisions about projects are aware of that information so they can utilize that in planning. But yet we also acknowledge we are not in the business of promoting tourism per se to these sites. So we oftentimes defer to the landowners themselves. And so if you, visit through our website, we don't put a lot of specific information about a site. We don't put visitation information, but what we'll do is we will link to those areas that have a public-facing website that, would like people to come see it and learn more about it. And so it becomes more obvious that those, sites are open and interested in having people, visit. So we just, we try to just balance that information, respecting that there are some that are not open to the public, but yet, helping direct people to information for those where they can visit.
Perfect. We have time for maybe one more question if there is one. Or if Heather, if there's another type of comment that you felt inspired to share with the type of questions that we have been having, feel free to use that time for that as well.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the last thing that I, would add would just be, again, if, as we are, working towards these larger goals of connecting to landscape scale initiatives and programs, and if you see a connection in your world, please do not hesitate to contact us. We, certainly have ideas to start us down these paths, but we will, really be most successful, with others helping engage us with that. So please don't ever hesitate to contact me or contact, the coordinator that might be closer to where you are. We're happy to, and really excited when we learn about some of these things, especially that we're not aware of. And so we are always open to that.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Heather. And again, thanks to everyone for joining and for hanging in with us with our technical difficulties. And, our webinar series happens once a month. So we are scheduled for our next webinar on December 7th. We're featuring the Nature Conservancy, and they're going to give a report on energy sprawl and the effects of that on landscape conservation, and just talk about some of the work that they're doing around that as one of our partners. And so if you can join us for that, we'll be sure to get the invite out. And by then we'll definitely have our new license figured out. So hopefully we'll be able to avoid any further technical difficulties. Once again, I dropped the links to the Scaling Up Toolkit as well as the Practitioners Network website into the chat box. So you can find those two different websites there. And we'll plug this recording into that, to those different websites, and we'll also be featuring all the upcoming webinars that we're preparing for the spring. So thanks again, and thanks to Heather for being our speaker today. Excellent presentation, and we look forward to hearing more as the program continues to grow and develop in the new strategy.
Thank you, Kat.
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you.